Sagittarius, the final warning from the divine. You can't keep carrying the world alone. Sagittarius, somewhere inside you, a quiet breaking has already begun. It's not visible to those around you. You still smile, still carry the laughter, still show up for others like nothing's wrong. But behind that brightness, something sacred is collapsing. You've been holding up too much for too long: dreams, responsibilities, expectations, pain that was never entirely yours to bear. And though your spirit keeps whispering that you're running on empty, you silence it with a brave smile and say, "I'm fine." But the divine sees what no one else does. The exhaustion that sleep no longer heals. The ache in your chest that no affirmation can soothe. The heaviness that sits in your soul like a stone. You've mistaken endurance for strength, and self-neglect for love. You've become the fire everyone gathers around, yet no one tends to. And God, or whatever name you give to the infinite, is sending this message not as judgment, but as mercy. Because Sagittarius, this is your final warning before something sacred within you gives out completely. Before we walk through this message, take a breath. Let your guard fall for just one moment. You don't need to be the strong one here. This space is for truth, not performance. If you feel the pull of recognition, if your heart whispers, "This is me," then like, share, and subscribe. Not for the algorithm, but as a way of saying to your soul, "I'm ready to stop pretending I'm unbreakable." Gate 1: the weight of the world that was never yours to carry. Sagittarius, for as long as you can remember, you've been the one everyone relies on. The voice of optimism when the room grows heavy, the problem solver when others falter, the bright flame that never seems to fade. You've built an identity around resilience. Somewhere along the way, you began to believe that being strong for everyone else was the only way to prove your worth. That love, loyalty, and purpose must be earned through endurance. You've been the pillar, the guide, the healer, the friend who says, "Don't worry, I'll handle it." But you weren't meant to carry the whole sky. Every time someone needed you, you said yes, even when your body whispered no. You canceled rest to show up for others. You ignored your exhaustion to fix one more thing. You silenced your tears to protect someone else's comfort. You told yourself it's what good people do. But Sagittarius, generosity without boundaries is not goodness. It's self-abandonment. And heaven has been watching you pour from a cup that's long been dry. You see, your strength has become your disguise. On the outside you radiate confidence, laughter, movement. But in the stillness of night, when no one is watching, you feel the emptiness creeping in. The quiet ache that asks, "When is it my turn to rest?" You've been smiling through spiritual fatigue. You've been pretending that independence is liberation, when in truth it has become your cage. The divine is not warning you because you've done wrong. You're being warned because you've gone too long without listening. The exhaustion you feel isn't random. It's sacred communication. Your body has become a messenger, your spirit a prophet. The headaches, the sleeplessness, the sudden waves of sadness or irritability, they are not weaknesses. They are divine alarms ringing through your vessel, begging you to stop, to sit, to breathe, to finally acknowledge that the weight you've been carrying was never meant to be carried alone. Somewhere deep within, you learned to equate being needed with being loved. You became addicted to the feeling of importance that comes from being everyone's savior. But love that demands your depletion is not love. It's dependency. You are not here to prove your worth through exhaustion. You are not here to earn acceptance through sacrifice. The divine gave you a fire meant to illuminate paths, not to burn yourself alive just to keep others warm. Think about how often you've put your healing on pause for someone else's comfort. How many times you've ignored the whisper that said, "I need a break," because you feared disappointing someone. How many moments of joy you've postponed in the name of duty. Sagittarius, your soul has been patient, but even light has limits when trapped in a vessel that won't rest. The angels who walk beside you are not scolding you, they are pleading with you. Stop before your spirit fractures. The danger now is not visible collapse, it's invisible erosion. Each day that you push beyond your limit, you lose a piece of wonder. The laughter feels forced. The dreams feel heavy. You find yourself surviving your own life instead of living it. And the tragedy of it all is that you've built such a perfect mask that no one suspects your struggle. You've trained the world to believe that you're fine, and so no one offers to carry you. But the divine does. The divine is reaching for you now, asking you to put the world down, to rest your fire before it flickers out. Your independence was never meant to isolate you. Freedom doesn't mean doing everything alone. It means choosing what deserves your energy. You've confused autonomy with self-denial. You've convinced yourself that to need help is to fail, that to rest is to regress. But Sagittarius, rest is not the opposite of progress. It's the foundation of it. You cannot guide others while ignoring your own compass. You cannot preach light while refusing to stand in it yourself. This moment, the one you are living right now, is a sacred intersection. The divine is whispering. If you continue as you are, your body will intervene. Illness, breakdown, burnout, they are not punishments. They are forced pauses from a universe that loves you too much to watch you self-destruct. This is your mercy call, Sagittarius. Not because you're weak, but because you've been too strong for too long. You have forgotten what ease feels like. You've forgotten the simple joy of doing something just because it nourishes you. You've forgotten how to breathe without counting the tasks that await you. But the divine has not forgotten you. You are being called to remember that you are not a role, you are a soul. Not a resource to be drained, but a being meant to feel, to rest, to receive. This is not a punishment. This is grace disguised as fatigue. The exhaustion is the doorway to awakening. It's the sacred pause before rebirth. The moment where you finally learn that survival is not the goal, living is. Sagittarius, the universe is pleading. Put down the armor. The war is over. You've fought enough. You've given enough. And now it's time to learn that strength also means surrender. Gate 2. When Sagittarius confuses self-sacrifice with love. Sagittarius, you've always believed that love means showing up. No matter what it costs you. Somewhere deep within your spirit, you learned that to be good is to give endlessly, to be worthy is to endure silently, to be loved is to be indispensable. You became everyone's anchor, everyone's healer, everyone's constant source of strength. And at first that felt noble. It felt purposeful. You thought, this is what I'm here for, to help, to uplift, to protect. But slowly, that love began to demand more than your body and heart could sustain. You stopped noticing how often you apologized for needing space, how quickly you dismissed your own pain. When someone called, you answered, even if your soul begged for quiet. When someone cried, you offered comfort, even when you had no tears left to cry for yourself. You started believing that rest was laziness, that saying no was unkind, that setting boundaries meant you didn't care enough. And so, you kept giving past the point of health, past the point of balance, until giving became a reflex, not a choice. But the divine is asking you now to see the difference between love and self-erasure. True love does not demand your depletion. It doesn't require you to abandon your own well-being, to maintain someone else's comfort. Real love includes your name in the circle of care. The version of love you've practiced, this one-sided, all-consuming devotion, was never sacred. It was survival disguised as virtue. It was fear wearing the mask of compassion. You learned to equate self-sacrifice with safety because at some point someone rewarded you for it. Maybe as a child you were praised for being mature, for not needing much, for being the easy one. Maybe later in life people admired your independence, your ability to handle everything. You were applauded for strength, never for softness. And over time that applause became your drug. You thought, if I keep being strong, they'll keep loving me. But Sagittarius, love built on performance is not love. It's dependency bound in disguise. The divine whispers now. You can stop proving your worth through pain. You are worthy simply because you exist. You don't have to earn love by exhaustion. You don't have to barter your peace for belonging. You don't have to keep bleeding to prove that your heart still beats. Every time you silence your needs to please others, you teach the world that you don't have any. Every time you smile through pain, you tell the universe, I can handle more. But you were never created to carry it all. The heavens are watching you stretch beyond your limits, and they ache. They see how your body trembles from fatigue you call busy. They hear the quiet sighs you release before bed. The kind that sound like surrender. You've mistaken endurance for faith, but endurance without boundaries is self-harm. Even the most powerful fire must rest between burns. You are no exception. What breaks the divine heart most is not your weakness, but your refusal to be human. You've placed godlike expectations on yourself, to heal, to save, to sustain everyone. But in doing so, you've denied the very design of your humanity. The need to be held, to be seen, to be helped. The angels whisper, You are not the sun for others if your own light burns out. You are allowed to step into the shade. You are allowed to rest without guilt. This cycle of overgiving is not generosity. It's a cry for connection. You believe that if you keep serving others, they won't leave. If you keep fixing everything, no one will forget you. But Sagittarius, love rooted in obligation is not belonging. It's bondage. You are not meant to be remembered for how much you endured, but for how fully you lived. When you choose yourself, the people who love you conditionally will call you selfish. They'll tell you that you've changed. They'll say you've become distant or too focused on yourself. But that's how you'll know the cleansing has begun. Divine love never guilts you for healing. Those who truly love you will understand that your no is sacred, that your rest is holy, that your boundary is an act of self-respect, not rejection. The divine is showing you that love without reciprocity is a wound disguised as virtue. You've been bleeding compassion into empty hands, and now those hands are full, while yours tremble with fatigue. The balance must shift. You are not abandoning love. You are redefining it. Real love says, I care for you deeply, but not at the expense of my own soul. Real love says, I can help you, but I must also help myself. Real love says, I am not your endless source. I am a living being with needs, rhythms, and sacred limits. Sagittarius, this realization will break you open, but it will also save you. It will strip away the illusion that self-sacrifice equals purpose, and reveal that your true purpose is peace. It will hurt, yes, because you will have to disappoint people who benefited from your overgiving. But disappointment is not destruction. It's divine detox. It clears the way for relationships that don't drain you. The moment you choose to rest, you will feel guilt. The moment you say no, fear will whisper they'll leave. Let them. Because the ones meant to stay will adjust to the new you, the one who no longer bleeds for affection. The universe will replace those who only took with those who pour back into you. You'll realize that what you mistook for love was simply your attempt to earn a belonging that was already yours. Sagittarius, this is the mercy and the warning. God is not trying to take your light away. He's trying to keep it alive. He's reminding you that even angels rest between assignments. Even stars fade into dawn to rise again. You are not the exception to the divine law of balance. You are a child of the cosmos, not its caretaker. So now put your hand on your heart and whisper, my worth is not measured by how much I carry. Let that truth sink into your bones. Because the world will keep asking and you will keep giving, until you finally remember that your only true task is to live in alignment, not depletion. Gate 3, the breaking point and the sacred surrender. Sagittarius, there comes a moment when even the strongest spirit must kneel. Not in defeat but in truth. That moment is approaching for you, and you can already feel it. The heaviness that never leaves your chest. The fog that dulls your once clear vision. The quiet thought that whispers, I can't do this anymore. You've brushed it aside countless times, told yourself it was just fatigue, just stress, just another season to endure. But this isn't just another cycle. This is the edge of something sacred, the point where the divine steps in to stop what you won't. The universe has been gentle with you for a long time. The subtle signs came first. The restlessness in your sleep, the sudden waves of sadness that had no clear source, the way joy started feeling like an effort. You ignored them because you're Sagittarius, the eternal optimist, the adventurer who believes there's always a way. You convinced yourself you could outthink exhaustion, outrun emptiness, outshine loneliness. But you can't heal spiritual depletion with more effort. You cannot refill your soul by pouring faster. The divine has been watching you sprint through storms that were never yours to chase. And now, in mercy, it's calling you to stop. You've worn the armor of strength for so long that it's fused to your skin. You've forgotten how to live without it. But beneath that armor is the tender, weary human who has been asking for rest. The one who longs for a quiet place to fall apart. You have mistaken collapse for failure, but Sagittarius, collapse can be holy. Sometimes God breaks what we've built to show us how it's been hurting us all along. Sometimes the divine intervention isn't a miracle that saves you. It's the exhaustion that forces you to save yourself. You have reached the breaking point not because you are weak, but because your soul has been whispering enough for far too long. This isn't punishment. It's redirection. The divine will not allow you to continue abandoning yourself. It will not let you keep pretending that martyrdom is meaning. The breakdown that's coming, whether emotional, physical, or spiritual, isn't meant to destroy you. It's meant to empty you of everything that was never yours to carry. It's meant to clear the space where true healing can finally enter. Sagittarius, you've built a life where you're everyone's refuge. But now heaven is becoming yours. The strength that once kept you upright is now the very thing holding you back from receiving help. God cannot send healing through closed doors, and your pride has kept the door shut. It's time to unlock it. It's time to let grace in. Do not be afraid of stillness. I know that for a soul like yours, restless, driven, burning with purpose, silence feels like punishment. But stillness is not emptiness. It's sacred recalibration. When you stop moving, the divine can finally move through you. When you stop fixing, healing can begin. When you stop speaking, truth can finally be heard. There is a reason why your body has begun to whisper through pain, why your mind feels foggy, why your heart feels like a clenched fist. These are not random symptoms, they are sacred messages. Your body, your mind, your spirit are trying to align, but you keep running in opposite directions. You've become so accustomed to functioning in survival mode that peace now feels foreign, even suspicious. But peace is what your soul has been begging for all along. You don't have to keep pretending that you're fine. You don't have to smile when your heart feels heavy. You don't have to keep carrying people who were meant to walk. There's no reward in breaking yourself to appear unbreakable. The divine doesn't celebrate your suffering. It longs to end it. And it can only do so when you finally say the words that terrify you most. I need help. The truth is, Sagittarius, you're not meant to do this alone. You never were. You're part of a divine design that includes support, rest, surrender. You've built walls of independence so high that even love struggles to reach you. But love, real love, doesn't come through control. Comes through openness. The moment you drop the illusion of self-sufficiency, you will feel the universe rush in like light through a cracked window. You'll realize you were never carrying the world, it was always carrying you. This is the sacred surrender. To let go without guilt, to rest without justification, to say no without apology. To trust that if the divine created galaxies without your assistance, it can hold your life while you heal. The sky doesn't ask the stars to shine every night. It gives them dawn to rest in. You too are allowed to dim without disappearing. And as you surrender, you will feel a shift inside you. A quiet peace that feels almost unfamiliar. You'll breathe deeper. The world won't feel as heavy. You'll realize that the people who truly love you never needed your constant strength. They just needed you. They'll show up when you stop performing. They'll hold you when you stop pretending. You'll see that the love you've been giving away so freely has been waiting to return home, to you. Sagittarius, the divine isn't warning you to scare you. It's warning you because your light is sacred, and heaven refuses to watch you extinguish it. This is your mercy moment. Lay your burdens down before the universe does it for you. You are not abandoning others when you choose yourself. You are teaching them what love without martyrdom looks like. Let go. Cry. Rest. Let the world spin without your control. It will not fall apart. But if you keep trying to hold it, you will. You are not here to be everyone's savior. You are here to be whole. And wholeness begins the moment you finally stop carrying what isn't yours. Gate 4 Rebirth. The return to balance, rest, and real joy. Sagittarius, after every collapse comes a holy silence. Not the silence of emptiness, but of renewal. You will feel it soon, this quiet after the storm. The first days may feel strange. You'll wake up and realize you don't have to rush. That the world isn't waiting for you to fix it. That your worth is no longer tied to what you produce, or how many hearts you hold together. It will feel foreign, this freedom. It might even feel uncomfortable. Like a pair of wings rediscovering flight after too long being bound. But this, beloved archer, is what healing feels like. The divine has stripped away everything unsustainable. The false strength, the impossible expectations, the roles that demanded too much of your light. What remains is you, raw, real, radiant. At first, you might mistake this new simplicity for loss, but it is in truth your liberation. For the first time in years, you are not performing. You are simply being. As you begin to rebuild, the universe will gently teach you a new rhythm. One where giving and receiving coexist in harmony. You'll start small. You'll say no to something you used to agree to automatically. You'll rest without guilt. You'll allow someone to help you without rushing to repay them. You'll remember what it feels like to laugh for no reason, to sit in sunlight without thinking of all the things you should be doing. And in those moments, Sagittarius, you'll feel your spirit return home. The divine never wanted you to stop loving. It wanted you to love from overflow, not from emptiness. This next chapter is about learning sustainable love. Love that doesn't drain. Love that doesn't disguise obligation as devotion. Love that includes you in its circle. When you love yourself first, you no longer need to earn affection. You stop chasing people who only come when you're useful. You begin to attract those who come because you're you. And yes, some people will fall away when you start living from truth. The ones who thrived on your constant availability will call you distant. The ones who benefited from your exhaustion will say you've changed. But the divine will replace them with souls who match your new frequency. People who celebrate your rest, who ask about your joy, who don't need your strength to validate their own. This is how heaven restores balance. It removes the takers so that the givers can finally breathe. You will start to notice the sacred in the simple. The morning coffee that tastes like peace instead of duty. The quiet walk that feels like prayer. The laughter that comes without guilt. You will find that your best moments are not grand or heroic, they are gentle. The divine isn't calling you to a bigger stage. It's calling you back to your center. Boundaries will become your new form of worship. You'll learn that no can be holy, that I can't right now can be compassionate, that silence can be a language of love. You'll start trusting that the world won't collapse if you stop carrying it. And one day you'll look around and realize that life kept going without your constant effort. And in that realization you'll feel an immense release. Sagittarius, this rebirth is not about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before the world convinced you had to earn love. You were born radiant, curious, wild-hearted. You came into this life with a fire that was meant to explore, not to sustain everyone else's comfort. The divine doesn't want your exhaustion. It wants your aliveness. You are not here to serve endlessly. You are here to experience, to travel, to wonder, to create, to love deeply, to learn endlessly. The warning that came to you as pain has now become your compass. You no longer walk through life as a servant of others' expectations. You walk as a steward of your own soul. You've learned that you can be strong and soft, independent and supported, giving and discerning. You've learned that balance is not selfishness. It's sacred maintenance. And when you finally rest your head without the familiar weight of duty pressing on your chest, you will hear the whisper of the divine saying, "This is all I ever wanted for you, to remember that you are loved not for what you give, but for who you are." The fire that once burned to exhaustion now burns with clarity. You shine, but you no longer scorch yourself in the process. You move, but you no longer flee your own stillness. You love, but you no longer forget to include yourself in that love. Sagittarius, this is your resurrection. This is the moment the light returns, not as a performance but as truth. You've learned that survival is not living. You've learned that silence is not peace. You've learned that strength without rest is just slow destruction. Now you rise, not as the savior of others, but as the guardian of your own sacred flame. And the divine smiles because finally you've understood the lesson. You were never meant to carry the world. You were meant to illuminate it, one breath, one truth, one act of self-love at a time. Conclusion, the moment you finally choose yourself. Sagittarius, take a breath. You've walked through every gate, faced the mirror of exhaustion, touched the edge of surrender, and come home to yourself. This is what healing looks like. Not fireworks, not noise, but stillness. The kind of stillness that feels like truth. You are no longer running, no longer proving, no longer trying to earn space in a world that was already yours. The divine doesn't want another version of your strength. It wants your softness. It wants your peace. It wants the sound of your laughter when you finally stop pretending you're fine. The final warning wasn't a threat. It was a rescue. It was heaven placing its hand on your shoulder, whispering, "You don't have to do this alone anymore. You've spent years equating value with usefulness, love with sacrifice, peace with silence. But now you know true strength is the courage to rest, to ask for help, to say no to need. The moment you stopped trying to hold it all, life began holding you. You were never meant to be a soldier in the war for everyone's happiness. You were meant to be a seeker of light, a messenger of balance, a living example that freedom and compassion can coexist. The world doesn't need your exhaustion. It needs your wholeness. It needs your wisdom, not the kind you preach but the kind you live. So here at the end of this message, let it be known, you've listened. You've seen yourself. You've understood the warning, and you've chosen to live, chosen to breathe again, chosen to rest without guilt, chosen to honor your limits as sacred. Sagittarius, this is your rebirth, the beginning of a new rhythm, one where you no longer mistake chaos for purpose, where love includes you, where peace is your default, not your reward. If these words have found you at just the right time, let this moment be your promise to yourself. Like this message, if it brought you clarity, share it with someone who hides their pain behind strength. And subscribe not for the channel but for the commitment to keep walking this path of truth, gentleness, and restoration. You are no longer carrying the world. You are walking in it light, free, and whole again.